All right, everyone. We are live. Baruch Hashem. Okay. So it is Sukkos now, and we started last week learning this very special discourse the on the water libations, and now we're going to learn part two. Bezrat Hashem. The parts of it I don't understand, which is a little frustrating to me, but hold on one second. White background for the what's it called, for the border. Okay, we're ready to go. So last week we began the discourse over here on page 158 in Lekutei Torah, and we learned the discourse until the middle of Perek Beis. We finished the parentheses, and we're holding by Bezeh Yuv and Maim Razal. So, being that I need to finish this quickly because we still have to say Mishnah Torah tonight. This is Hoshana Rabbah. It's a very holy night to be learning, and the tonight is the night of King David, of David HaMelech. A very powerful night, and the custom is to be up most of the night, but we do read the Chumash, the Varim, and we do that before Chatzos, and then there's the Hillel, which starts at 1:00. So we got to be done over here in about 2 hours. So I'm not going to do a review. So you can listen to class number 1 and get the review. The question, the only thing we were dealing was the difference between the wine libations and the water libations. Remember, we explained that the wine libations are the lights of Bina, the lights of understanding of the godliness, which leads us to joy and to happiness. It pulls forth the hiddenness of the soul. It opens you up, like the Levites did, and the Levites increased that revelation of divine understanding and divine comprehension into the cosmos. And that was their whole service in the temple. And that's why when they poured the wine, it brought tremendous joy, because it was kind of like a Gan Eden experience. Gan Eden is a very happy place, because the Garden of Eden, because there was great divine comprehension. So through the pouring of the wine libations, there was a great divine comprehension. However, that's already divinity that has come into some level of comprehensibility, a divinity that has come into a state of what we call yesh. It came already into a form of a state of existence. Then there is the lights of Chachma, which is still specified godliness. It is purely a divine energy prior to any form. And therefore, it can't be comprehended. It's like the first flash where the energy is still very pure. It doesn't have any design yet. And on that level, it's way higher than Bina. It's the levels of Chachma. And the ones who initiate that and channel that light are the Kohanim. And that's why Kohanim, when they're in touch with that level of the divine, they're just in a state of silence, because it doesn't allow the noisiness of Bina. The understanding creates noise and excitement, but this is more of an overwhelming sense of awe. And that's the powerful experience of Chachma. Usually, that's not accessible to us. That level of divine connection, that we should experience it in a manner that it is so overbearing. We usually don't have that ability. The Kohanim have it, but it's not shared with the rest of the Jewish people, and even the Kohanim, the priests, to a limited level all year long. And then on Sukkos, those, because of the increased tshuva that we did Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, in which we evoked so much godliness, that causes God to reveal himself on a level where the pure light prior to its coming to a state of Bina reveals itself. And that is the water flow of Chachma. That is the Usheavtem Maim. These are the water libation. So we also learned last week why it, and this is where we're holding a middle of the explanation, why it's not written in the Torah. It was the rabbis in the oral law it's revealed, but not in the written Torah. So we learned because the water is since it comes from Chachma, it's higher than Bina. The Sefer Torah is Bina, because the Sefer Torah is already words. It's letters. That's where you have to be very careful with the words, every word. The book of the Torah is like God's thoughts. Thoughts, however, are already articulated thoughts. They're not in speech, but it's thought already. It's particular words already. When you're thinking, God is thinking, and that's the Bina experience, and Bina is full of words, and that's the Sefer Torah. But the water libation is coming from a level prior to thought, pre-thought, just a flash of light higher than thought. And from that place we're drawing from. And therefore, the Torah cannot capture that. However, the oral Torah does, because the oral Torah is from Malchus, and Malchus is rooted in Chachma. And that's higher than Bina. That's where we left off. Yovan, this will understand. This is after the parentheses on Daf Pei. Maim, what the sages say, that it is better your love. Miyayin, it's a verse in Song of Songs where Israel says, God, your love, your closeness, your intimacy is better for me, miyayin, even than wine. I enjoy your closeness even more than wine. So the sages explain that to mean as follows. It is more pleasant to me and sweeter to me, the words of the scribes, more than the wine of the Torah. Which is telling us, what does that mean? That Israel appreciates the enactments that come from the scribes. The scribes are referring to the rabbis, and we appreciate that even more than the actual document that God Himself gave us. That's called the wine of Torah, the Torah with all of its secrets, but that's the wine of Torah. And we're saying, which is the written Torah, and we're saying that the words of the scribes are even higher and more precious to us. Simply, it means that we appreciate very much, because anybody that practices Judaism knows that the rabbis came and made Judaism so much more complex than had it been if it would have just been based on biblical Judaism. And you would think that we would be kind of like frustrated and upset about that, because there are so many more nuances and regulations and prohibitions and but when you're tuning in and you really understand and appreciate, you realize that bringing us a much deeper level of divinity, of divine connection, and a much higher level. And for that reason, the higher you go, the more perfect everything is, the more precise everything is. So they're opening us up to a much deeper level of connection to Hashem. And he's going to explain it over here. And how does it materialize in the holiday of Sukkos? The fact that we're given the water libations over the wine libations, which is, as we spoke earlier, it was directly given by God, this mitzvah, but He gave it via the route of the oral Torah, not through the route of the written Torah. We need to understand. Now the question he's asking: why are the rabbis called scribes? I mean, there must have been a few rabbis who were scribes, but most rabbis were not scribes. They're rabbis. Why are we calling them scribes? Scribes are those who write a Torah. Why are all the rabbis suddenly called scribes? What does it mean, the wine of Torah? It should have said, it is better to me, it is sweeter to me, the words of the rabbis, more than the laws of the Torah. What does it say than the wine of the Torah? Why, when it's referring to the written Torah, it's calling it the wine of the Torah? And when it's talking about the words of the rabbis, it calls it scribes. Why? The Indian, and the idea is in Imavua B'Sefer Yetzirah, because it is stated in the book of Yetzirah, which is the book of formation. Okay, with three things God created the world: the Sofer, through a scribe, the Sefer, and a book, the Sipur, and a story. Such a cool statement in Sefer Yetzirah. Okay, if anywhere is to tell you how God created the world, it should be in the book of creation, the book of formation. So that book is coming to tell you the secrets of how God created. So over there it says God created the world with three things: through a scribe, through a book, and through a story. So what does this mean? These are three stages in how the infinite, undefined, unconstricted, or unspecified energy materializes into a creation. So it goes through 3 stages. First, there needs to be a scribe, just like any book. Like there's a human, each and every one of us has potential to write and to produce all kinds of ideas. So when you're born, you're not even a scribe yet. You're just a potential. And then when certain ideas start forming in your mind, and you become an author, you become a poet, an author, a teacher, whatever it is, and you become creative in your mind, then you are that's called that's the author. You're authoring already. You're already directing energy into a focused form. You're now you're being creative. So the author, which is the sofer, the scribe, the writer of the book. So it's already beginning to form, but it's not yet formulated sentences and words. It's still very vague. It's like you have an idea still buzzing in your head, which from it will come a book. Then eventually you go and you actually put it into a script. So then once you script it, it's already fixed. It's already harder to change. Then you make edits here and there, but it's already scripted. It's already it became far more fixed. But but then it needs someone to read the book. And then, in other words, then you need a marketer, basically. You can write a book and then no one knows about it, but you need someone to take the book and advertise the book and market the book and get it into places so that it actually gets transmitted and spoken and revealed. And so these are 3 stages. So in God, it's also that way. The first initial stage is Chachma, which is called the scribe, the author. Chachma is still a state of ayin, of nothingness, but it's getting already an idea of creation. Then there is a book. It becomes a Sefer Torah, the book. That's in Bina, where all these ideas crystallize and formalize into a very particularized script. It's God's thoughts. And it's already a Hashem thinking the cosmos, thinking how the design of all the worlds. And then he actually speaks it into existence. That's in his own head. Then he takes it down into speech, which is called Sipur. That's when it's coming from Bina to Malchus. Malchus is speech. And God relates the story, and by relating the story, he actually creates it into reality. So to our end, it's not real until God relates the story. But in truth, it's much higher when it was in thought, and it's obviously even higher when it's in the stage of the scribe. So the scribe is the level of pre-book. Okay. Sefer ubchenas chachma. The scribe is the level of chachma. Hamashpia ala sefer. Now the scribe is the one who transmits to the book. Anything that's in the book was in the creative mind of the author, of the scribe. The sefer is already bina. That's already understanding, where it's already fixed in a particularized form of a bchenas machshava, which is thought. But then from thought, that has to drop down the sipur ubchenas dibur. And then Sipur is the story. Ubchenas dibur is already speech. Hamakabel mesefer, that receives from the book. Shehi bina, which is bina. Shei bilti machshava, because if you don't have any thought, ef shaladaber, you can't speak unless there is first thought. So all speech was first thought out, and thought is still far richer than speech. Once things come down to speech, they're much less than there is in thought. But so it's diminished. But still, the only way that it exits and it goes into reality is it goes into speech. And this is, he says in the parentheses, this is what it means that in these 3 things God created his world. Because they're coming into the worlds, into a being. God creates the world through the word of God, which is the story. He relates the story. When God spoke and he said, let there be light, let there be thing, he spoke the world. That's called a story, a sipur. But then God was reading it off a script. What was the script? He was reading it off his thoughts. He wasn't reading it from a book. He was reading it from the book, but the book over here means his thoughts. It says in the Zohar that God looked in the Torah and he created the world. He looked into his thoughts, which is the Sefer Torah, and then he spoke creation. And the speech receives from the thought. Shenikra Sefer, that's called a book, which that itself, that script that is in God's thoughts, is coming from a Shunim Shach Mebchenes Chachma. It's coming from a higher level, which is the author of the book, where it could have gone any other way, but it didn't. It's like the creative energies that are leading into these particular thoughts. Aye Sofer, which is what we say, where is the scribe? Which means that in the level of scribe, it's not yet fixed. It's still in a state of aye. Aye means you ask, where is he? Like I say, aye makom kavoda. Where is his glorious place? There's no set fixed place yet. It's still beyond time and space. It's beyond any fixed image yet. Aye, it's still in a state of where. The zehu bereishis bara, and that's where when the story is told in the Torah about creation, it starts bereishis, in the beginning, bara, when he created. So according to this, what we just learned, we understand the sequence. Reishis is referring to higher than the book. It's still the level of scribe. Because where is the level of scribe hinted to in the Torah itself? In the first word, bereishis. Because we know reishis chachma. Chachma is called reishis. Chachma is called the beginning. So when it says bereishis, means with chachma, with reishis. One of the targums, one of the translations of the Torah, translate the word bereishis bechuchmasa, with chachma, with wisdom. So reishis means chachma. Bara is bina, because bara means it comes. Bara also means from the word it emerging outward. So from chachma it emerged into fixed letters, into a giloy, in a revealed letter. And then vayomer Elokim, again God speaks and he relates it from his thought. He relates it down. From the creative mind of Chachma, it is drawn to the fixed thoughts. And from the fixed thoughts, Ledibur, it then lowers down into speech, and you have the whole force of creation. And now we understand why it's so special. Now here's the thing. When God created the world, all we had access to was the creation itself. And we had a choice. Either we can live on the outside of the words, not even recognize that it's words, or we can be like Abraham and start searching and discover that all of reality is only words of God. But we can tap the energy, which are the words, the story. We can tap the story, the speech. That's Abraham. Then when God gave us the Torah, God gave us access to his thought. Now God handed us a Torah scroll. He's giving us something beyond all of creation. He's giving us the document in which his thought, in which through it he created the world. So and that's why the Torah has authority over the world. That's why tzaddikim, by looking in the Torah, they're able to change things in the world. Because from the thought you can rearrange the speech. So the Sefer Torah is much higher than the creation. The Torah is higher than creation. And then come the rabbis and ratchet it up a notch. They reveal to us, they plug in not just to the level of God's thoughts, but they plug into the author itself. They have a dialogue, they have a conversation with the author. And in that sense, they're gleaning energies and light from even before the Torah, even before the thoughts, the concrete thoughts of creation. And from there, they're bringing us all the rabbinic enactments are all coming from that lofty place. And that's why they're so special. And that's why we call them scribes. That's why the sages are called scribes, because they're plugged into a level higher than the book of the Torah. They're plugged into the scribe itself. How precious is to me divrei sofrim, the words of the scribes. Sofer, that's the level of the sofer, of the author. Shehu chachma, which is wisdom. Vishamu shayrish Torah shabal peh, and that's the root of the oral Torah. The oral Torah is higher than the written Torah, and also the nisach hamayim, and the pouring of the water libations. That's why we said earlier the water libations could not be written in the Torah because it's coming from a higher place. The nisach hamayim, and that's water. Water is chachma. Water is the author spilling their creative mind itself, not yet their book, but what's pre-book. That's the pouring of the water. Yoiser more miyenoi shel Torah than the wine of Torah, because wine we learned is bina. But we said wine is bina. V'hu Torah shebeksav. The wine of Torah, that's the written Torah. Shenikra sefer, that's already called the book. And on that level, things are already far more fixed. Ubchenas bina, and that's the level of bina. V'nisach hayayin shebebchenas chachma. V'nisach hayayin, sorry. V'ubchenas bina, that's the bina v'nisach hayayin, and the pouring and the wine libations. The wine libations are phenomenal. In creation, we get to experience God's thoughts. There's so much higher revelation, but it's already fixed thought. When you're getting the waters, you're getting even pre-thought. So much higher. Because the level of chachma, of wisdom, which is the level of sofer, which is the level of the scribe, is way above mipchenas bina, way above the bina experience, which is the book. So look in the Maimer called Aye Sofer in Shemos, Parsha Shemos. There is a Maimer in Torah or called Aye Sofer, which we studied already. And on the pasuk Shchairani, Me'inyan Sofer v'divrei Sofrim, where there it explains this at great length, the concept of the author and the words of the scribes. However, even though on Sukkos we are given access to such a high libation, such a high flow of the water, which is chachma, so it would mean kind of like it's beyond joy. It's beyond that experience. Sukkot should have been a very, very overwhelming, awed type of an experience of awe and but not joy. But we're told that what? No, Usheavtem Maim, you should draw the water bisasan with joy. How do we have joy? If it's something that is so high and so lofty you can't comprehend it, how do you have joy? Joy comes from comprehension, like we learned in the beginning of the Maim. When you don't understand something, it doesn't bring you joy. It brings you joy when you fully you get it, you get all excited. Now, even though chachma is way above bina, wisdom is way above understanding. Nevertheless, chachma and bina today and day in the Loim Isparsh. Nevertheless, we are told that chachma and bina, wisdom and understanding, are two friends that never separate. They're never supposed to be separated. Because, in other words, the way it works, like in the human, in our experiences, when we have a flash of an insight is powerful. But if you don't grab onto it, if you don't then take it into the bina, if you don't kind of funnel that energy of that first initial flash into bina, you will lose the flash also. You can't hold on to it. There's no grip on it. You need to right away, you have to bring it in. And a concept, an author has an idea. If they don't, concretize it by putting it in, by writing a book and by taking notes, they'll lose it also. It's too, right? The energy is still it's still fleeting. It's fleeting and floating because it's so abstract. It's so high. So chachma, in order for creation to be sustained, the divine energy of chachma has to constantly flow into the anchors, into bina, where bina anchors it. So, and therefore, chachma and bina always are attached to each other. The imkain. So, therefore, the moment we have access to increased chachma, we have to make an effort to find vessels for it. So, we need to attach it so it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow away. That's the meaning. What he said. We have to bring it down. And how do you bring it back down? How do you machabram? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. What he means is, just like above, the chachma and the bina have to be together. So down here below, whenever we have chachma, we have to create that fusion as well of chachma and bina, so that down here is aligned with up there. Up there, chachma and bina are always unified together. They need to unify together. So when the energies of chachma are flowing, we're not supposed to leave it just in chachma, but we need to reflect what's happening over there as well to bring the chachma into the bina. And when we do this above, it causes this to happen above as well. Sorry, when we do this below, called the arousal from below, it happens above as well. Now, why do we have to do it? If it's anyways flowing from Chachma to Bina, like it says that Chachma and Bina are they're two friends that never separate. So if it's already a constant, why does it require our work in order to establish? So over here he doesn't say, but in the Siddur, parallel, same mimer, but in the Mittel Rebbe's version, in the Siddur he explains that this that we say that Chachma and Bina are always connected, that's the external energy that always flows. So in order for creation to always happen, the constant creation is that God as the infinite, Hashem's infinite light first becomes a flash, and then immediately flows into the vessels of Bina, into thought. And it has to happen. But that's the natural flow of creation. That's not the news of Sukkos. The news of Sukkos is that we're getting a much higher, deeper, inner infusion of Chachma light. Not the regular flow, because or else you'll ask, what's the whole Chiddush of Sukkos? This happens all the time. Chachma is flowing into Bina without Chachma and Bina. If Chachma and Bina would separate, there would be no creation. Everything would cease to exist. It has to flow continuously. The answer is that's on a far more external level. The Chachma that we're talking about over here is the essence of Chachma, a much, much deeper, higher infusion of Chachma. For that new light, we have to make an effort to grab hold of it, to take hold of it. For that, we need to bring in Bina energy. How do we bring Bina energy? We draw the water, and while we're drawing the water, we're also at the same time doing the avoda of Bina, which is Simcha. We're doing the service of Bina. We're creating an expansiveness within ourselves. We're opening ourselves up. How do we do that? Now, from this part of the Maim, later we'll see a whole more beautiful, deeper explanation. That's going to be later in the discourse. But what it seems like in this part of the Maim, your joy is not coming from the water. Water can't make you joyous. Water is beyond your understanding. So you're making sure that those aspects of Judaism and Torah that you do understand, which is your Bina, put it this way: when you're going to draw the water, you make sure to have a few l'chaims first with wine. The wine brings you into the joy. Or let's learn the wine instead of drinking a few l'chaims, because you're not allowed to do that in the temple. But they weren't allowed to do any service when they were intoxicated. But the spiritual wine, you study that which you could understand. You activate your Bina. And even though you're now going to enter into a very deep place that you can't understand, you're still impacted by the Bina that you've had. And that Bina gives you the joy. And when you're opening up, you're causing what's happening, you're approaching the water with the expansiveness of Bina. It helps the water, which usually the water comes just as a flash, or the water just comes as a drop. The water should also open up and flow with with an openness, that the Chachma should not remain a closed, elusive thing, but the Chachma should kind of like lean into the Bina. And the two of them should be attached. So that's what it seems like from it doesn't say it so explicitly here, but that's what the Mittler Rebbe uses the words. Is that through this Simcha, it helps the Chachma settle down and not be so elusive. Usheavtem, and we have to, you should draw the water with joy. Maim, water that is the wisdom. Tishavu, you should draw it with joy. Which is the experience of Bina. And when you do that, that is going to accomplish that the Chachma and the Bina should attach themselves, so that they should be two friends that don't separate. That even this much higher, deeper infusion of cosmic Chachma should be able to connect itself into the Bina. look in what we said in the discourse. He's referencing a discourse from the same idea. How this is not just a Kabbalistic, mystical idea above, but this also applies into our divine service. Adam by a person. That a person needs to serve God with both Chachma and Bina together. You can't, Bina for sure is not good enough. If a person always just serves God only based on their understanding, without the transcendence of Chachma, then they remain very limited and in a very dangerous place. It's not. You have to have Chachma. But they explained that Chachma itself is also not good enough. In other words, a person who likes to experience these higher experiences, but doesn't work hard to grasp and to understand, will always remain with godliness above them, but never permeating them completely. So we need to have both services. The service of Chachma, which brings us to bittul, to something higher than us, but we also need to have the service of Bina, and you're supposed to attach both of them together. Yachatomim. Two of them need to be there all the time. And it's nekuda behechale. There has to be a nekuda. Chachma is called a point, and Bina is called a heichal. Heichal means a chamber. So, in order for the chamber, which is the Bina, to be not to become misaligned, it needs to always evolve around the point. The point has to always have to, and the point is to surrender yourself to something bigger than you, and not to say I understand. To always be in a state of, let me find out what is the truth, even if I don't grasp it. And based on that truth, I try to also make myself understand whatever I can of that truth. And that's what it means, that your Bina is anchored into Chachma. The EF Shali is Kiyom Bepchinas Echad Lavad. But over there he explains you can't have one. There won't be a sustainable holiness and godliness in the human being if they are deficient in one of these two. There has to be both of them. Ayin Shal. And also look in the Maimer, which is a Maimer on Pashas Veschanon. Over there, where he explains the concept of Shalom Shalom l'Rachik u'Lekarev, where I think Rachik, as we're going to see soon, is referring to Chachma. Chachma is more distant because it's above our heads. Bina is called Karev because it's close. And you're supposed to have Shalom Shalom. You have to have peace. You have to have them both together. Chachma and Bina. Now, soon the Maimer, at the end of the Maimer, we'll say soon because I hope we get to it. At the end of the Maimer, the Rebbe is going to explain how a far more Geshmaka repeater over here. Usheavtem Maim b'sasain is that in Sukkos we have the power that even the Chachma itself can lead us into joy. Not simultaneously, you're also using Bina. Because Chachma, usually the reason why Chachma doesn't lead us to joy is because it's lacking in its revelation. Because it is still energy that is so high, it's like you're seeing something at a distance. It's far away. But the power of Sukkot is that which is far manifests right in front of us. And for that reason, it too can generate joy, but it's a different type of a joy. It's an egoless joy. The joy of Bina has a certain sense of self to it. I understand, I appreciate. Here, you're so overwhelmed, but at the same time, you're dancing because the truth is felt so strongly and so sharply and so vividly, and it's just about it, not about self, as we're going to see later. But it's the Chachma itself that is bringing sussing, not that you should connect it to Bina, where the Bina is the sussing. In other words, the joy is not coming from the wine; the joy is coming from the water itself. You're drinking water, and it's causing explosion of joy. That's the Chiddush. We're going to get to that later. And that is the reason why it says that the men of good deeds were singing and dancing at the time of Nesach HaMayim, the time of putting the water. Rambam says that not everybody was participating in the actual festivities. Everybody came to watch, but not everybody was. But it was the great tzaddikim that were dancing, the great righteous people, men of exceptional good deeds, and so on and so forth. They were dancing at the time of the pouring of the water. And in order to effect this connection of Chachma to Bin. Another idea of where you see that we have to keep the chachma and the bina closely attached one to each other is seen to, number one, in the fact that we applied simcha, joy, to an otherwise non-joyous type of experience, because it's beyond joy, as we spoke earlier. But yet we apply joy. Usheavtem Maim b'sasan. But also the fact that when they poured the water, they poured it simultaneously with the wine. Again, attaching these two experiences. And they were so meticulous about it, as I mentioned last week, they made that the water funnel was the hole over there, was a smaller hole, and the wine funnel was a bigger hole. So what happened was, imagine like these two cups, and you pour something in, so it spins like almost down, it's going down a drain. And the wine, and so they poured them both at the same time. So one Kohen poured the wine, the other Kohen poured the wine. And when they poured them, so generally the water would go down faster because it's lighter, and the wine is a little thicker. But because the water was made with a thinner hole, and the wine's hole was a little bigger, wider, so they were measured perfectly, that they both completed at the exact same time. And that's again bringing out this idea that you have to keep the chachma and the bina fully integrated, fully unified the whole time. Like Rambam says, so if Hilchos Tamidim himself, and we turn over the page, Rambam says in the end of the laws of the daily sacrifices and the additional sacrifices, and this is also a concept stated in Zohar, Parshas Balak, Tafkuf Peites, Sefer Mid Aleph, Apasik Vayavel Yayin, on the verse that he brought him wine, when it says by Yaakov, that Yaakov brought Yitzchak, when Jacob brought for Isaac wine, the Zohar says, the Armamaya Bahu Yayin, that he poured in a little water into the wine. We once learned the whole discourse about it. It's this idea, this fusion of Chachma and Bina together. So these are all the same idea of Usheavtem Maim b'sasan. Okay, the next part, which is part number 3, the chapter Gimel, which is chapter 3 in the discourse. The second half of it, thank God, flows very easily. The first half of it, I'm still struggling with it, and I don't have clarity. But maybe with God's help, tonight is a holy night, and whatever he's speaking about right now relates to tonight, the dynamics of this holy night of Hoshana Rabbah. So maybe it will open up for us. Let's hope. Now we say, so now we understand what the idea of Usheavtem Maim b'sasan, drawing the waters of Chachma, b'sasan, with joy. But now we're going to approach the last 2 words of the verse. Mimaynei hayeshua, from the springs of salvation. So what does it mean, springs of salvation? It must be a very high source from where these water come from. And they're called the Mayon, the spring, and it's 2 springs. Mimayonei, from the springs hayeshua of salvation. He says we first need to understand what salvation means. Now this is so special that we're learning at Hoshana Rabbah, because the whole idea of Hoshana Rabbah, which is tonight, is the day that we bring down the big Hoshana. Hoshana is when we cry out, Ana Hashem Hoshiyana, God help us. And we use Hoshanas, we use the myrtle, not the myrtle branch, the willow. And we walk around with the willow and we slap it 5 times. And we do some kind of a whack it on the ground, some kind of a mystical idea, but it's all called Hoshanas, which is all about to evoke Yeshua. Now, when do we do all these? Now, every day they used to do Hoshana, and they would walk around the altar in the temple with the first of all, they would take big tall willows and they would put them around, surround them around the ark, not the ark, the altar. They would go around the altar 1 time, like we do every day in our shul also. We go around the bima once. But in Hoshana Rabbah, you go around 7 times. And I'm not sure, I don't remember, it's possible that the big willows that they surrounded around the altar was only done on Hoshana Rabbah. They completely surrounded it with huge willow trees all over. And we, in that sense, take a bundle of 5 willows and bang it on the ground, on the floor. Now, what do we do in Hoshana? Why today? So obviously, these are very deep mystical secrets. In general, I feel, this is just always my feeling this time of the year, is like Judaism becomes the most mystical at the end of Sukkos. Especially on Hoshana Rabbah. It's like if you're a person of rhyme and reason, and to you Judaism is only what's like visible, like, and you give all kinds of Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch explanations to things, which are great, which is all rational Judaism. There's no way you can get through Hoshana Rabbah. It's like over here you have to admit that something mystical is going on. Okay, the 4 species in general is very mystical. But afterwards, the fact we go around, then we go around 7 times. Then we take this willow, 5 of them. We whack it on the floor. What are you doing? Then we start dancing like coffins around. It's like you see there's some kind of a mysterious buildup that's going on in which we're moving cosmic energies that are just absolutely beyond our comprehension. However, Chassidus gives us a little bit of a taste, a little bit of something. Now, the 7th day of Sukkot is the day associated, because it's number 7, it's the day of Malchut, of kingship, associated with King David. That's why he's the Ushpizin tonight. David HaMelech, King David, is the Ushpizin. He is the visitor who visits our Sukkah. And the entire Hoshana Rabbah is the continuation of Rosh Hashanah, which is Binyan HaMalchus. It's the conclusion of the Binyan HaMalchus, of the construction of kingship. It's the 7th day of Sukkot, so 7 is Malchus. And it's the completion of the big construction of the Malchus. It's a continuation to Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, the whole Hoshana Rabbah. That's why we know it's the time when, Rosh Hashanah God writes, on Yom Kippur God seals, by Ne'ilah, by the conclusion of Yom Kippur. Hoshana Rabbah is when they hand out the verdicts. They get sent. So, or they put them into envelopes, if you might say. It gets ready to be dispatched. So, but the main idea is that it's the day of King David, it's the day of Malchus. And we know, and that's the concept of evoking the idea of Yeshua. Ana Hashem Hashiana. It's all about Yeshuas. Because David HaMelech says in Tehillim, we say it in Hallel now every day, Kos Yeshuas Esa. A cup of salvation I will lift up. So mystically, David HaMelech, he personifies the attribute of kingship. And the attribute of kingship is a cup, the vessel, and it gets filled with the wine. And the wine has within it the element of Yeshua. It has the element of salvation in it. So we need to understand why is it so important that of all people, that Malchus should get salvation. It's directing the power of Yeshua, of a salvation, into Malchus. Simple reason is because King David was always in trouble. He's always running from somebody. Someone was always pursuing him. And he always needed to be salvaged. He always needed to be saved. Salvation means to be saved. David HaMelech is always getting into trouble, and God is always saving him. Probably the person who got into trouble more than anybody else. God is always saving him. But the reason why King David is always getting into trouble is because mystically, he is the personification of the divine attribute or the aspect of God that is also always getting into trouble. The part of God that is the most vulnerable to get hacked, to get infiltrated, to be abducted, usurped, whatever. That's the idea of the Shekhinah. Shekhinah is Malchus, who goes into exile and so on and so forth. And in us, it means our souls when they're inside our bodies. When our souls in their heaven, they're safe and sound. when our soul comes in our body, and that's when we're in a danger zone. Malchut, as he's going to explain, the attribute of kingship, which is the Shekhinah, she goes down to create the world, to sustain. She actually dips her feet into creation. When she dips her feet into creation, all kinds of, she's making herself, God forbid, at risk for all kinds of whatever. And that's why God has to protect her continuously. And that's what the Yeshua is. The Yeshua is, and Yeshua means salvation. It's coming from a very, very high place, and it extends itself down, down, down in order to protect Malchus. And that's the Yeshua. So now we have to understand, okay, so what are the springs of salvation, and what do they have to do with drawing of the water? So we're going to see if we're going to be able to put the puzzle together. But first, let's talk about Kois Yeshuas, as he says. Let's understand what Yeshuas are, and what is it doing in the cup, and why King David, like, they love in order to understand the concept of the springs of salvation, we need to first understand the verse which says, the cup of salvation I will lift. King David says this, Al Midasai, on his own attribute, on his, what he personified. King David is the personification of the attribute of Malchus, of the world of Atzilus, of the world of emanation. Shenikra, which is called Kais Yeshua, it's called the cup of salvation. Now, Malchus is called a cup. Let's first understand why it's a cup. Because Malchut is the attribute, it's the feminine attribute. It doesn't have anything of its own, just like a cup. A cup is merely a container for things to be put into it. And that's what the moon is. The moon is also an element. It doesn't have anything of its own. It receives all the light of the sun, but it reflects it into the dark world at night. Malchus doesn't have anything of its own. It receives all the energies from above, but it's meant to convey it into creation. It's the sustaining power of God communicating the power of, just like speech. Speech is the same thing. Speech is a container. Speech is nothing. If you think about what are words, speech is made up of words. What are words? Mumble jumble. Words, nothing. You can take words and throw them around, a bunch of letters. There's no content to it. Unless you take content. The content is not the words. The content is the thoughts. And even the thoughts are just really a cup also, because the thoughts are a higher cup. Also, it's also a feminine attribute. It's a recipient. To receive what? The emotions and the intellect. So if you put cohesive ideas and cohesive emotions, and you want to communicate it, and you put it into thoughts, and then eventually into speech, these are containers. And these are the ways you can convey. So that's why it's called a cup. King David HaMelech, is this huge, massive bowl that receives all the divine energies from everything else and manifests it in the world. It's the last of the divine attributes. And it's all about final manifestation. That's why he's the one who builds the home of God and brings God down literally into the vessels down here into the world. Builds the base of man. That's why he's Mashiach as well. The energy of King David, because that's Mashiach, the grand finalizer, who brings everything down into the vessels. But you got to get down and dirty when you do that, because you got to go into the dark places. And when you get down and dirty, you can get dirty. As we said, you can get dirty, you can get filthy, and God forbid, you can even get sick. Get your virus, you can get sick. It's dangerous. So you need special protection. So this is the idea and that's the salvation. Like it says in Zohar, the Habahai Kois, the Zohar says like this in Parshas Vayechi, that in this cup, the cup that we're talking about, the attribute of Malchus, is negidu, it flows, birchoin, all the blessings, me'inon Yeshua is the from the salvation from above. The salvation from above flows into the cup. V'hu not a line, and he takes it. V'kanish line legabe, and absorbs it to himself. I was bothered when I was reading the Zohar. I checked it up actually. That it would seem like if it's referring to Malchus, which it is, it's definitely referring to Malchus. Why doesn't it say she absorbs it? V'hi not a line, v'kanish line legabah. Why does it say v'hu, which is masculine? The only so it's interesting that So the Zohar that I have, it has on the side of it, it has translated. Zohar is written in Aramaic. This is a Zohar that has a translation into Lashon HaKodesh, into Hebrew. So in the Hebrew translation, they translated it in feminine terminology, and she takes it. I said, that makes sense. But in the actual writing of the Aramaic, it doesn't say it in the feminine; it says it in the masculine. So the only explanation I have is because he's referring to David. David said it. King David. David, even though he's a feminine soul, he's still a man. And that's why it's using a masculine term. David is referring to his level, that he's taking it all to himself. Ukemoi, and like, now what does that mean spiritually? That there is a cup over here that absorbs everything. Like speech. Al derech mashal, like the function of speech. Uakeli, that's the vessel. All the powers of the soul are drawn and are enclosed in the powers of Malchus. Which are the powers of speech. Speech takes the powers of the soul. What are the powers of the soul? Seichel, the intelligence, the Chachma Bina, the understanding, Umidos, and the emotions. So is the Malchus, who Akeli, that's the vessel, Shaboy Nimshach HaShefa, Mikola Esespheres, in which all the Shefa, all the flow from all the 10 spheres, from all the 10 attributes, flow into the bowl, which is Malchus. Zau Sha'amar Hillel. So first of all, by the way, tells you on the significance of today's day. Since today is the day of Malchus, and our souls are all pieces of the Shekhinah. So really, everything we had till now is still energies. We're stoking energies, but the vessel is today. Today's the container. Today's when it actually flows into your physical life, into your manifest. That's why the main celebration and happiness is the day after Shana Rabbah, Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, because now you have it in the bank. Now you have it deposited. Until then, it's energies. Promises, it's your commitments have been made to send you the check, spiritual check. Yeah, let it be physical too. Everything is just in ideas. Now it comes into the vessel. And that is why Hillel, one of the great sages. So Hillel was a great sage, and he used to go to Simchas Beis HaShoeva. He used to go to the festivities in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple. And Hillel would dance and dance. Right? And Hillel would say something that seemed to be the most arrogant statement ever. He said, if I showed up, everybody's here. You can get the music going. I'm here. He said these words, the Gemara says, Emani kan, if I'm here, Hakol kan, everybody's here. Get the show on the road. I'm here. Almost saying that the whole party is for me. And we know that Hillel was the most humblest of all people. So, not going into the explanation of what Hillel meant and so on and so forth, but on a deep mystical level, Ani, the word, Hillel said the word Imani, if I am here. Ani is a term that is used for the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, the divine attribute called Shekhinah, the feminine entity called Shekhinah, which is the vessel, the container, is called I am. I. Like David HaMelech says, Va'ani tefillah, and I am prayer. Using the word Ani. Ani is Malchus. As it's stated many times in the Zohar, that the word Ani, saying I, is referring to Malchus. Maybe it's because Hashem is already in a state of, Malchus is a state already of somethingness, as opposed to, it's a state of yesh, of something, as opposed to Chachma, which is called ayin, nothingness. Same letters, but nothingness. The source of Malchus. Because Chachma is still not fixed and defined. This is already a full-fledged being. And that's why it's called Ani. So there's a lot of other explanations, but right now, it's not coming to me. But this is the meaning. Because if you don't have a vessel, basically what you're saying is like this. What Hillel is saying, if the Shekhinah is here, if the vessels of the container, if King David is here, if the Shekhinah is here, if the vessels are here, Hakol Khan, everything is here, because everything flows into the vessel. All the higher attributes flow into the vessel. If the Shekhinah is here, Hakol Khan, everybody's here. Okay, the Pirish Bezoar, which means that if any other higher attribute is there, let's say the attribute of Teferes is there. Not necessarily all attributes are there. Teferes is a particular energy. Okay, it's a blend, it's a fusion. If Chesed is somewhere, it could be Chesed on its own. If Gevura is somewhere, it can be Gevura on its own. But if Malchus is there, Malchus is the cup to receive everything. Everything flows into Malchus. Okay, similar to Yesod, Yesod is also, remember we learned that last week, Yesod is called Kol. I don't know if we learned it Thursday night, maybe it was one of the classes that we had on Shabbos. Yesod is called Kol because it receives, Kol is it draws from all the spheroids with the intention to give it to Malchus. I think it was during the week. I'm sorry, I think it was during Shabbos when we learned it. It could depend, but the same idea. But Malchus is really the Hakol. Everything is in Malchus. It could depend Zohar, as it says in Zohar. Hear these words, it says in the Zohar. Ishchinta de ikra ani. The Zohar says it specific clearly. If the Shekhinah that's called ani, Sharia Khan, is dwelling over here, Hakol Khan, everybody's here. Chulu, Ba'in Shah. Okay. So now that we know what the cup is Malchus, right? We need to now know what does it mean, Kais Yeshua is the cup of salvation. The Yeshua is Pirish B'Zoyar. And Yeshua is, it's stated in Zohar, Man Yeshua is Da Yamina. The Zohar states that what does it mean? Yeshua is salvation. That's the right side. The Chsiv, it says, in other words, the energies of kindness. So now let's translate. Kos Yeshua is then would mean a cup filled with kindness, a cup full of love, a cup full of kindness. Because Yeshua, the Zohar says, Da Yamina, that's the right hand. Where do you know that Yeshua is associated with the right side, with the energies of the right? Right is kindness, left is Gevura, is severity, discipline. Where do you see that Yeshua is? It says, V'toisha lo yaminai, and his right hand helped him, brought salvation. Or we have another pasuk. He doesn't say it over here, but I was thinking, Hoshia yamincha va'aneni. Let your right hand help me, va'aneni, and answer me. So Yeshua stated clearly associated with the right side. So a lot of kindness flows into Malchus. Malchus has to have a flow of kindness in it. However, we can't stop by that. Salvation has an element to it that is Gevura as well. Salvation is not just a flow of mellow, free love. Salvation has a certain intensity to it. When you're getting salvation, you're not just getting a light like that. Salvation is God stepping in to really save you when you're in trouble. So saving, there has to be a force, there has to be an intensity to it. So in Zohar it says, Pashas Beresh, it's interesting. The Mittel Rebbe's version of the Maimer, which in some way makes it easier, he doesn't mention the second idea that he's going to mention now. He flows that Yeshua says is completely coming from Chesed. And that fits with what I learned many times in the Lekutei Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, where he explains the Ana Hashem Hoshiyana. Hoshiyana is kindness, and Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. Hatzlacha, there's Yeshua and there is Hatzlacha. Yeshua means salvation. Hatzlacha means success. So he explains many places that Hatzlacha is Gevura. And we say in davening, we say, Ana Hashem Hashiana, please God help us. So please God, make us succeed. And he brings there that's why you find Hatzlacha by Yitzchak. When Eliezer was going to find a wife for Isaac, for Yitzchak, he keeps on saying, Ha'atzliach Hashem darki. Was God matzliach my way? That's the first time the Torah, I think, uses the idea of hatzlacha. Success is from the left, and salvation is from the right. And that's how the Middle Rebbe goes with the Maimer. Doesn't mention anything of this next idea that he explains over here. But in this version of the Maimer, he's going to create that Yeshua itself is a blend of Chesed and Gevurah. Parshas Bereshis. There is another Zohar. So one Zohar, the Zohar in Parshas Truma, declares that Yeshua is a flow of kindness. Soon we're going to see what the function of that kindness is in the cup. We're going to get to that in a moment. What's the function of that kindness? But now we're going to first add a little spice to the kindness. Parshas Bereshis and the Zohar Parshas Bereshis Daf Aleph. This is right in the beginning of Zohar. Piddish, the Zohar says, Shem Chamesh Alen Tekifin, that the Yeshua, the concept of Yeshua are the 5 leaves, hard leaves, the Sakra and Shoshana, that protect a rose. So when you look at a rose, the rose has its nice petals. According to the Zohar, the type of rose that we're talking about has 13 petals. And then around it, there are thick green leaves. And the purpose of those thick green leaves that are not the color of the rose is that they are the bodyguards of the rose. Since the rose grows amongst the thorns, in order that the thorns should not prick the rose and hurt when she's growing and destroy the rose. So there are 5 leaves that kind of, serve as a cushion. Protect the rose from the neighboring roses that are growing and where the thorns will be able to prick the rose. They shouldn't. And they don't destroy the rose. These are the 5 leaves. So just like a physical rose. Now, we know that Malchus, one of her names, she's called a cup, she's called the moon, she's King David. She has many, many manifest Malchus. One of the things that refer to Malchus is the rose. And the idea that she grows amongst the thorns is the idea that the Shekhinah, the Malchut, goes down amongst all the prickly stuff, all the evil forces of darkness that are within creation that can try to harm her. Like our souls come into this world, and there's always someone who tries to prick and harm the soul, get the person to misstep or cause any kind of obstacle in a person's way, hurt the soul. So there are 5 bodyguards that are sent down. Now, if they're bodyguards are usually not just lovey-dovey people. They can be very nice bodyguards, but you need to have people that are tough. So when you're thinking about a bodyguard, you're thinking more of a tough person, a Gevura guy, not a Chesed guy. You call up, the agency you call is Gevura, not Chesed, to get a bodyguard. These are the 5 thick what we call leaves that protect the Shoshana. Shehem Hey. Now, why 5? Because which we know this refers to the 5 powers of Gevura, the 5 powers of severity, and that's why they can act as guards and protect. So this seems to go against what the Zohar says somewhere else. And the Zohar says that's Yeshua. Yeshua are the 5 leaves. They're called the Yeshua that save the rose. And that's the Yeshua that's in the cup. Because, as we said earlier, the cup and the rose are the same idea, in the sense that they're both Malchus. Kais Yeshuas. So how does it fit with the fact that we said it's kindness? The Inyan, so now to reconcile the two, so the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe says over here, the Inyan, and the idea is Shen Hei Gevurais Memutakais Mehei Chasad. They are 5 Gevurais, 5 powers emanating from Gevura, but they're sweetened forces of judgment. They're powerful forces of judgment, but they're mellowed out by the powers of kindness. So what we have over here, so it seems to be saying it's more Gevura than it is Chesed, but it has been, in other words, these are bodyguards that are very sweet and nice bodyguards. They do their job. They're going to protect, and they're gonna. And if a bad guy comes along, they're gonna do what needs to be done. But they're soft and mellow, nice people. And this is the idea that there's usually, you can get gevura, you can get very mean people, very intense, very rough. Mellow gevuras. Kemavur, like it's stated, Bezoar Rakia, in Zohar Rakia, which is a Pirush on Zohar, Reish Pashas Bereisha Sham, where he explains over there that I don't have the book Zohar Rakia, or else I could have looked this up. Where he explains that you can't say that this is that when the Zohar says that it's the five Alan Kifin, it's the 5 leaves, that it's pure Gevura. Because elsewhere the Zohar says that Yeshua is Chesed, is kindness. So it's the Gevuras that have been mellowed out and sweetened by the kindness. So what now? Okay, so once we have this concept, so now, and it fits, if you think about it, the word salvation, as we discussed earlier, the meaning of salvation. Someone comes to rescue. Salvation means to rescue someone. A rescuer has to be, if someone is coming to the rescue, you love that individual. That's the ultimate kindness. Someone, especially rescue, means they go into a dangerous place to pull someone out from a danger. So rescue, but at the same time, what are you imagining? Strong people that can do acts of gevura, kill the bad guys, do whatever it needs to be done to pull the hostage out. But at the same time, they're agents of kindness. That's the blend. And that's what, when you're thinking Yeshua, you're not thinking just about cold water pouring. You know what I'm saying? The sense of the Yeshua means, so you see, it's that it has that blend of chesed and gevura to it. Now, why is it that we say that Malchus, the rose, and the cup is filled with Yeshua energy? The Inyana Yeshua, and the idea of the Yeshua is Ki Malchus the Atzilus, because Malchus of Atzilus, Yoredes, she needs it in particularly, as we spoke earlier, because she is the one Malchus of Atzilus. She is the one that goes down into dangerous places, just like who? King David. King David lived a life on the edge. He went into danger all the time because he needed to prepare the world to be a godly place. So he couldn't just sit back and hide behind in a closed holy place. He needed to go out there to encounter that which is unholy, to spread, to widen the borders of holiness. Ki Malchus Datzilus, and the same idea is that the Shechina goes down. Yeredah, she goes down. Lahach Joyous to give life. First of all, the Shechina is the life source of the 3 lower worlds. But in order to give life to them, she has to get up and close to them. And once you're coming into creation, there are the good forces. And once in creation is created in a way where it gives free choice, so there'll be good guys and bad guys. And the Shekhinah is now going there in a dangerous place. Like it says a pasuk, I think in Job, in Eov, or maybe it's in Mishlei, but I think it's in Job. Ragleha, her feet. Yoredes, maybe it's in Proverbs. Ragleha, her feet. Yoredes maves, go down to a place of death. Al kain tzricha, for that reason, she needs those bodyguards. Lepchinis Yeshua, she needs those salvations. Lo haishia, to rescue her. Shalo yiyeh yanika sachitzainim, like those leaves that go around the rose. There should not be, the forces of evil should not be able to hack her. Yanika sachitzainim means and take and steal her energy. She gives everybody. She distributes even to the dark, but gives them minimal. They always want to hack the Shekhinah and steal more than what they're entitled to. And that's why she needs protection. David, and this is what David says. That's why David is the one who says it. Kois Yeshua's Esa, the cup of salvation I lift up. Sheyugva b'chenas hakois. Lahaloisa batzilus, to lift her up in tatzilus, asher shomla yigrachara. So here seems like what happens. David HaMelech, no, but King David says, Kois Yeshua, the cup of salvation. We understand. So the cup needs salvation because the cup pours the energy into the three lower worlds. So it needs protection. It's like the watering pail that goes down to water all the flowers. And it's walking amongst the thorns and all the dark stuff as well. So it needs protection. That's why the Yeshuas are in the cup. The security entourage. But he adds more. He says, the cup of salvation I will lift up. What's the idea of lifting up? Lifting up is part of what the security guards do. The point over here is as follows. They provide security for Malchus when she is in the lower world. But if for whatever reason there is an attack, what needs to happen? Malchus has to be moved to a safe zone, has to be lifted up, outside, back in Atzilus. The moment she goes up in Atzilus, she's safe. She's in the safe zone. Because in the world of Atzilus, there's no hacking possibility. Let me try to give a psychological explanation to this. A soul goes into a body. We're here to infuse energy, godliness into the world. But because we're walking in the streets of this world, sometimes we're under attack, which means some unholiness is trying to get the soul to sin, to pay attention towards something unholy, to give more energy into the klipa. If you're suddenly feeling a desire to eat something non-kosher, because you're in a non-kosher world, if you wouldn't be smelling those delicious whatever, you wouldn't have the desire. But because you're walking in an unholy world, you get a desire for something non-kosher, or for a non-kosher relationship, or anything like that. It's dragging. It's a desire that something is pulling you in an unholy way. If God forbid you do that sin, that means you're releasing all this energy of holiness into the klipa. Klipa becomes very enriched, and that's why they're poking. That's why they want to infiltrate. They want to pull the energy. So the sages say that when you're feeling your Yetzer Hara, if suddenly somebody feels their Yetzer Hara, they feel a strong negative impulse to do a sin, Mashcheu lebeis hamedrash, go run to the shul and go study Torah. And the Yetzer Hara will melt away. Instead of fighting with it, back off. Don't stay there and think what a hero you're going to be and not sin. I'm going to time off. I'm feeling this thing. I don't like what I'm feeling. I'm going to go to yeshiva now for a day. I'm going to go there for 2 hours. I'm going to immerse myself in Torah study. Why? Because when you're learning Torah, you're going into a place where the klipa can't come. Klipa can't exist in the space of Torah study because you're already in Atzilus then. In Atzilus, there's no evil. But sometimes to be able to withdraw, to pull out, you can't pull out yourself. You're already kind of being pulled there. So there's an assistant from above to help pull you. That's the 5 security guards that are there to help the neshama out and bring him to the base medrash, to a place where you'll be secure. So when her feet are going down to the place of death, when the moment there is danger, it's like any rescue, it's any dangerous operation. When a army is sending in certain people to go and for a certain mission, and they're going to do something, there's always a backup plan, just in case they'll get detected or they'll be taken by the enemy. You need immediately security backup helicopters or whatever. They'll come behind and they'll extract. If planes that are going into attack in a military, and then if someone is shot at by the and the plane goes down and the pilot is now parachuting, and the danger is that the enemy will not take this pilot as captives. So immediately you have to send in, what are they called? to try to extract this pilot and save him before he gets abducted by the enemy, or even after they got abducted, to take him out. That kind of an idea. So this is the same idea spiritually that has to happen with each and every one of us. We need to have Yeshuas there to help, and that's what King David is always saying. God, you're always saving me. I'm always getting attacked, and Hashem is always pulling him out. And that's the idea of Kos Yeshuas Esa, to lift the cup up, because the cup goes down, to lift it up. And that's what the Yeshuas affect, to help lift up. To elevate in Atzilus. By the way, you see the idea that I always say that when I'm teaching, there will come insight. Because I felt stuck today the whole day. I couldn't figure out, and it was resolved now when I'm teaching. Couldn't figure out. Well, it seems like you're escaping to a zone where you don't need the security. That's the point. Because you said you're going to play. The whole point of the security is that you can be in the low place and they're protected. So what does he say now? To lift up Tatzilus where there's no evil. If there's no evil, you don't need security. But now I put the two together. That's exactly what the security is doing. The security is helping extract you to go to a place where you're safe. And then when you're ready again, you'll go down again. And you'll do what you need to do. And then the security will help you come back to a safe zone. And that's the way it works. You go in, you infiltrate, you do what you got to do, come back again. Back and forth, back and forth. But to help the extraction, to help lift up, is this idea. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry. V'zehu inyan, and based on all of this, fa'ayin baramaz b'reish pashas b'reishas the pidish and asiyas hakoyis ula hamshich lepchenas malchus mehei gvuras ta'atik yain. Now the Ramaz in the beginning of Bereshis seems to say that the lifting up the cup itself is to draw down the Yeshuas. So that would mean, according to the Ramaz, it's different than what we're saying. It's not that the Yeshuas are, the salvation is helping her lift up. The point of why Malchus lifts herself up is to evoke the descent of these Yeshuas. David says, I lift my cup up to evoke and to draw down the power of Yeshua to protect, so that I can go down. I can go down with the protective power of the Yeshuas. But for that, there needs to be a lifting up, because since Yeshua is essentially, we spoke earlier, salvation essentially is the 5 powers of Gevura. They're sweetened, but they're 5 powers of Gevura. So you have to do a Gevura element. Malchus needs to do a similar type of we always say you have to do a Sarusa de Latata, an arousal from below that matches the arousal of above. So Malchus has to do a Gevura element, which is rising upward, which is Gevura, to evoke the 5 Gevuras. So then when she has these Gevuras, she can descend and she's safe. So according to that, the Esa is in order to stimulate the Yeshua. But according to his first, the way he seems to be saying it earlier, it's that the Yeshua itself help the ascent. But the main idea is that we get protection because of this cup, because of the Yeshua. Okay, so now once we have already an explanation on Kos and Yeshuas, and what Yeshua is, we need to go back, because we weren't talking about Kos Yeshua as the cup of salvation. We were talking about Usheavtem Maim b'sasa. You should draw water with joy, mimaine, from the springs of salvation. So we only brought this whole idea of a cup of salvation in order to give us an understanding of what salvation is. Once we know what salvation is, now to understand what does it mean, the springs of salvation. So springs of salvation, according to this, would mean the spring from where salvation comes from. Now that we know that salvation is what? Again, according to the Zohar and Bereshis, a flow of kindness. Pure kindness. Like I told you from the Mittler Rebbe is in his beer, Yeshua is pure love, a flow of pure love. Or we learned it's a flow of Gevura, but Gevura sweetened with the powers of Chesed. So it's a blend of both. There is a Mayon, there is a spring that produces these Yeshuas, this kindness and this Gevura. And Usheavtem Maim b'sasan, when you're drawing the waters down on the libation waters, you're drawing them from where? From the springs of salvation. What's the connection? How does that fit? This is where I was getting stuck today. But now something is beginning to turn my mind. Could be. We'll see. But let's first see the words. Yeshua from the springs of salvation. Mayon, that's the spring. That's where the salvation comes from. Lekutei shel bracha, to the cup, to Malchus. Malchus is called a cup of blessing. Because we said earlier, she's a cup that receives all the blessings from above. But again, she needs that spice. She needs that protection. We all need that protection in life to protect us. So the Mayon is the place from where that Yeshua comes from. This is similar to where it tells elsewhere. Be'inyan pidish nevarech the birchas hazimun. We once learned an amazing discourse on the concept of zimun. Zimun means that before you do the grace that when we eat, we're supposed to say the grace after meals, birkas hamazon. And the halacha is that if you have three people together, they're supposed to bench bezimun. They're supposed to make an invitation to their benching, and they say, "Let us bless God." One of them says, "Let us bless God," and "Let us bless Hashem," and everybody answers, "Yes, God is blessed," and then they all bench. And if there's 10 people, then you say, "Let us bless Hashem." They say it with God's name. And the right way of doing zimun is always should be with a cup. Koshel brach. So the cup of bracha really means, as we spoke earlier, that's Malchus filled with all the blessings. And at the same time, you do a zimun. What's the idea of the zimun? So the word you use is nevarech, let us bless. So in that mimer we learned, we have a cup of wine. We have a cup full of blessing. In order to fill a cup is a container of liquid. The water, the wine or whatever it is that went into the water has to come from somewhere. So the way it works is as follows. Over there he explains the source of the water, let's say, is a tank, a water tank, a reservoir. Where does the reservoir come from? From springs, from wells and springs. And where does the spring come from? From deep, deep subterranean waters. So there he explains there's three levels to the water. There's the subterranean water called the tahom, or in the words that he's going to use, it's called makar, the source of water. It's not even water yet, it's the source of water. It is water, but it's to all practical purposes, it's just a source. It's not in any way usable. Then there is the spring. The spring is when it's already coming out. It protrudes from under the earth, and it's coming out the water, the water. But the springs, you don't take the water cup to the spring, usually. The springs flow into a reservoir, where the waters, various different springs flow through rivers, you flow to a reservoir. That's called a brecha, a pool. A pool. From the pool, you draw through the pipes, through the plumbing, you draw it to the cup. So when you're saying Kos Yeshua is Esa when you're benching, you're bringing God's life down into Malchus. In your own life, it means into your own vessels, into your own table, you're bringing the blessing in. But what is the Zimun doing? The Zimun of three people together is creating spiritually the pool. When the three people say, or if they have 10 people, and one guy says, "Let us bless God," What he's accomplishing is that the springs are creating a reservoir, a pool. From there, you can fill the cup up. So that's why he filled the cup technically earlier, but he picks up the cup and he says, Nevarech is now to spiritually create the reservoir to fill the cup. So the idea that he's bringing from there is that there is a source from where the Yeshuas that are going into the cup is coming from on three levels. Reservoir, spring. So usually when we say Nevarech, we're creating what? We're creating from the Mayan, we're creating the reservoir. But now when we're talking about drawing the Yeshuas, Mimaine, we're pulling straight, it's not the pool, it's going to the Mayan. So al derech mashakat umakamach ben yipirish nevarech the birchas azimot shu k'moshe kasa b'rei mehemna parshas boy. It's like what it stated in Rei Mehemna. Parshas boy be'inyan. Over there he explains makar, the source, umayon and spring, the chafira and a dugout. Chafira is a dug hole, which really is not a place of water, but it's a place where you draw the water into a brecha, a pool. The Hebron is brecha. The chafira, the dugout place, is a man-made reservoir, and that's a pool called a brecha. Shenimshach l'sham hamayon, which the waters of the spring get drawn into the brecha, get drawn into the pool. And where does the mayon come from? Hanoveya, that is flowing mahamukar from deep from the source itself. Ayin sham. V'zeu, and this is the meaning of nivarech. Let us draw down lahamshich b'chinas brechazu, to create this reservoir, this pool. Lahamshich mimena, once you have it in the pool. In our case, in a modern time, we might say to bring it into the tank. And from the tank, you should bring it l'koishel bracha to the cup of blessing. Shemakabel mipchinas brecha. The cup of bracha receives from the brecha, from the pool. Haniskaliel that we said here. And this is the idea of the springs of salvation. It's the spring from where salvation comes from that goes into the cup. Now you see the connection, because the cup gets filled with kais Yeshuas. But we're talking about drawing down lights of Chachma, lights of Bina, as we discussed earlier. Why? And what's the Yeshuas over here? What's the salvation over here? Like how does that suddenly fit in over here? This whole thing feels like it falls into the Maim awkwardly. Like, what are we supposed to do with this? There's not much explanation. I'm going to give my own thought. The way I'm thinking, it seems like, and it's the last two lines in the Maim seems to imply this idea. All this water and wine, that we're enriching ourselves on Sukkos with enormous bina light of simcha. Our all simcha, our all joy for the whole year is pumped on Sukkos. If you want joy in the year, you got to pump it on Sukkos. And your water, which is even higher than the wine, it's like an amazing influx of godliness. But what's its purpose? Purpose is ultimately to come into your malchus, into your soul, into your body. For what purpose? So you take it with you all year long, and you illuminate the world. Part of that empowerment of all this light is not just it gives you joy and it gives you bittul to Hashem, nullification to God, but it also supplies the security for the year. It also gives the Yeshuas in. It injects the Yeshuas into, because it's needed. Because if not for the Yeshuas, if not for that power of salvation that will be there to save the person, the person becomes the biggest target. God forbid. The moment you finish Sukkos and you go out into the world, back to business life, and you're filled with all this incredible wealth, spiritual wealth, every thief and every robber and every thug out there in the universe is after you. because they want a piece of that. They want a piece of that energy. And the person is in danger, God forbid, of having a terrible fall. So included this water and the wine libation is mimaine ha-Yeshua, is bringing down the Yeshuas, which is all a protection to the person as well, to protect and to guide and to watch. You should be able to extract yourself. Every time it's getting dangerous and dark, there's always the elevation. That's how I understand it. Because it ultimately has to go into the kais, into the cup. So we're drawing down the wine. Let me mind Yeshua. Now, it's in the water and in the wine itself, the Yeshua. Why? Well, let's see the parentheses now. Vahainu. Hinas, so what are these two mayone? Remember, mayon is singular. Mayone is plural. Mayone vahainu pchenas yesoidos the abba ve'ima. So the Tzemach Tzedek in the parentheses adds, what is this referring to? This is referring to the two powers. Yesod is called a mayon. Yesod, simply, Yesod is the connecting energy from the masculine to the female. Yesod is so it's a mayon, it's the flow of all light flows from the Yesod. There is the Yesod of Chachma. So in every sphere there's a Yesod. And what's the Yesod of it? The ability to channel. That's called the mayon of each sphere. So in Chachma itself, in general, Chachma is called a mayon. But in Chachma itself, the Yesod of Chachma is the transmitter of Chachma energy, is particularly called the mayon. But mayone is because Bina also has Yesod, the Yesod of the woman. So the Yesod of Chachma and the Yesod of Bina together are called mayone. Now, even though the Maim, you're going to ask the question, the water libation, as we spoke earlier, is not Bina. The wine is Bina. The water libation is what? The water libations are lights of Chachma. They're not lights of Bina. So why are we talking about it's one? It should have said Mimayon, from the one Mayon. But we said earlier that Chachma and Bina have to always be attached together. So yes, the lights of Chachma, since you're doing Usheavtem Maim bisasain with joy, so you're connecting Bina into Chachma, and it's for that reason the two Yesodos, the two powers of Yesod of both Mayons, the Mayon of Chachma and the Mayon of Bina, are locked together, and the Yeshua is coming through. Now, how is the Yeshua coming through? You're getting Chachma and Bina. Where is the Yeshua element? Where is the salvation element? So let's see if we have an explanation on that. I tell you, it is a little mystical here, and it's this is father and mother. So this is called it. The Zohar states explicitly that the Mayons, the two springs, are Chachma and Bina. And then the Zohar says, "V'kulu mima bu'e nevi'in amikin," and they're all coming from very deep flows, from a flow from very, very deep places. These are very deep springs, not just regular springs. They're very deep, like they're going deep, 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 and from there it's drawing from a very, very deep place. I am Mashakasa Bebir al Pasuk Shishaim and Malchus Be'inya Mashakasa. So now we need to understand why the spring of Chachma and Bina are called Yeshua. Again, we said Yeshua before is a blend of kindness, a security type of a thing. So what does it have to do over here? Lights of Chachma and Bina, which is the water that the libation that you're drawing, which is really coming from Chachma but connecting to Bina as well. What's its relationship to Yeshua? So let's see if that comes clarified over here. This is a beautiful idea. It says, and regarding what it says in the future. In the future, one of the prophecies, futuristic prophecies about the days of Mashiach, it says, "Umayon mi beis Hashem yatsa." A mayon, a spring will go out from the house of God, the hishka, and it will water as Nachal Hashitim, the Shittim River. That means there's an area called the Valley of Shittim. There's not a river. There's a Valley of Shittim. Shittim generally means a place full of these special trees that are called Shittim trees. They use them to build the Mishkan, the Shittim trees. Now, it says in the futuristic times that from the Temple Mount and from the house of God, and actually from the Holy of Holies, a spring will go forth. And that spring will produce a river, and that will water Nachal Shittim. It will go very far, all the way down to the Shittim area. That's a simple reading. The deeper reading is Shittim, as we learn in many discourses, especially the Basi Lagani, Shittim comes from the word shtus. That's where all evil and sin and darkness comes from. Because as the sages say, a person doesn't do a sin until they get convoluted with the spirit of folly, foolishness. So the valley of Shittim means the valley of foolishness. Hollywood. The valley of foolishness. The valley of that doesn't reveal godliness. It reveals its concealment. And it produces shtus in everybody's heads. And there's a mayon that comes to water even the valley of shtus. That's why we have our mayon here down the block from Hollywood. To water. So what is the meaning? So there he explains an amazing explanation. What's the novelty in the days of Mashiach? That there will be a spring that will spring a water. Water in this case means water is the waters of Chachma, which Chachma means bittul, nullification. To bring bittul to God, even in the most farthest, even the valley of sinners, even in the valley of which produces sin, that valley will become flooded with waters of Chachma. Why? They'll have bittul, a nullification to God. The godly consciousness and awareness will be so powerful, it will even water the places most distant the most. Why? Because unlike today, when the entire flow of godliness is from Bina, not from Chachma. Because the flow of godly light to the world, it says, V'nohar yotze me Eden. A river goes out from Eden. Even though the river comes from Eden, and Eden is a spring, which is the Mayon, Eden is called a spring, which is Chachma. So there is a spring. Chachma comes before Bina. But Chachma is not felt in the world. Chachma is, today's days, Chachma is considered too, God never allowed Chachma energy into the world. Because if Chachma energy, Atzilus energy would be felt in the world, there would be no free choice. So Chachma had to stay behind. Bina flows through the Nahar. The Nahar refers to Bina, the river, goes from Eden and it goes down to Malchus. Malchus, which is the source of creation, is filled with Bina light. And from there, it creates the world. So in the higher world, there is Bina. There's a lot of understanding, and therefore they're surrendered to God. But as it goes further and further and further down, godly understanding becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, until you end up with a place called Nachal Shittim, where you have no divine understanding, no clarity. All you have is shtus, and you have a world full of sin. And the whole problem is because the problem is not in the end, the problem is in the beginning. Because when God let it out, he only lets the river out, he doesn't let the Chachma out. What's going to be the tikkun that's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Instead of the river flowing, the Mayon itself is going to flow. The Mayon is going to come forth. Not the river that's coming from the Mayon. The river, the spring itself. That means we will have access. There will be such a flooding of godliness in the world that the levels of Chachma were going to be revealed. When Chachma is revealed, it brings bittul even to the most unexpected places. Let me explain that in simple words. Hasidus can make even the biggest sinner into a tzad. Because Hasidus is the Mayan, it's the spring itself. It's not a latter interpretation of it. It's the spring. Mayanite, that's what we say. When the Mayan of Torah will come out. So I wasn't kidding when I said that the Mayan is placed across the street from Hollywood. This is part of the ultimate. I just have two people studying here, but it doesn't make a difference. The Mayan is set on the block of Hollywood because this is the fulfillment of the pasuk. Mayan mi beis Hashem yoytze. It will go out. It won't be in Jerusalem. Although there are people who listen to this class in Jerusalem and they get all excited. But where is the Mayan? On La Brea Boulevard, down the block from Hollywood. Because the Mayan has to flow directly over there to completely, to bring bittul. Now, obviously, is it consciously having an effect? It's subconsciously having an effect. Ki achshav now, sham shacham epchenes v'nor yoytze meyeden. In our current times, the entire flow is only from the river. Shu b'chenas bina. It's only the bina that gets out. So of course, higher up in the worlds of Gan Eden, where the bina is illuminating and enlightening, everybody is in perfect holiness. But when it evolves further and further down, Nemar, it says, Umisham Yiparet. It reaches the end of the world of Atzilus, it reaches Malchus, it starts going into the three lower worlds. What happens? It becomes separated. Yiparet, it starts creating separate consciousness. And once you have separate consciousness, eventually it becomes sinful consciousness and or whatever. It becomes a something and something separated. Until it can oppose God completely. But when the Mayan will be revealed, the lights of Chachma themselves will, you're not just going to have the wine libation. That's the point. You're going to have the water libation. You're going to have the Mayan itself going to come out, which is Me'ayin Timatze. It's Torah from a place that's pure nothingness. That's Chasidus. It's pure beyond grasp. And yet we understand it, but it's higher than, it's the pure nothingness. Azai then, Vihishka, it can water. Gam afilu b'chenes nachal hashitim. It can go down even the river of Shtus, even there. Shegam lamata, even below, yegilu abitul. There should be bittul even all the way down at the bottom. So now, hold on. So now we'll understand, even if you stop right over here, why the pouring of the water, which is tapping this revelation of the Mayan. That's what water is. It's not the wine. The wine is bina. The Mayan, the water libation is bringing the Mayan. It's really in the future that it's going to happen to its fullest. It's a little taste of the future. A little bit of that Mayan is pouring in they actually took the waters from the Shiloach, which is the water coming from the Mayan that it will eventually come out and water in the future. So this is that water. So we understand why it's called Mayane HaYeshua. Because when Chachma is revealed, when the powers of Chachma is revealed, there is no Yanikas HaChitzayim. It doesn't allow, it's a security. It doesn't allow. Where there's only Bina. When one's Judaism and one's connection to God is based on ego, not on ego, but on Bina, which is a self, they're vulnerable to corruption. But if your foundation and you're rooted in ayin and nothingness, and you root yourself deep into the bittul, and you can carry that bittul with you, then you're safe. So now we understand why the Usheavtem Maim B'sasan, we said, has within it Mayane. It had Mayane HaYeshua, salvation to it, because that's the salvation. It's this protection that it's providing. That even when it goes outside, that's what we said, the whole reason why the cup needs salvation, because it's going out. It's going into the Nachal Shittim. It's Jews moving to Los Angeles. Souls coming down into San Francisco. They're moving into places that are not necessarily places that are God-fearing places. Godly conscious places. And even over there, the bittul should come. With this, we'll also understand the quality of the pouring of the water. The water is pulling from the nar. You're not pulling the water from the river. You're pulling the water from the mayon. Which is which is much higher than the pouring than the wine libations. That's from bina, which is the idea of the river going out. The river, even though it's a river of water, but it's for our purpose, it's like it would be a river of wine, because bina is wine. The mayon is the water. The spring is the water. And that's where the pouring of water is. And that, in addition to everything we learned earlier, how lofty it is and how great it is, there's another quality. It gives Yeshua. It gives salvation. It enables a person to walk in the world and not fall. It enables you always to pick yourself up. The Yeshloim Agamkein, we can add even more. The Mabua Nevi and Amikin, that these, when the Zohar says that the two springs are Chachma and Bina, and we said earlier that the Yesod element of Chachma and the Yesod element of Bina. Now he's saying that the Mabua Nevi and Amikin, that these deep, a spring that is pulling for, the spring is from a very deep place, Beis Mazalois v'noitzer v'nake, are the two Mazalois, the two mazals of Keser. It's not Chachma and Bina. It's Chachma and Bina drawing from a Keter, which remember we spoke many times, comes from the two strands. Chachma takes from the eighth mazal called V'notzer, which if you rearrange the letters gets the word Tzinor. Tzinor means a pipe. And Bina takes from the 13th mazal called V'nake. If you rearrange the letters, you get the word Kane. Kane means a straw. So a straw and a pipe, which draw Keser light. So it's even higher. It will fit very good with what we learned earlier. It's the 5 powers of Gevura coming from Atik Yomin and the 5 powers of Chesed. Remember we said earlier that Yeshua is a blend of Chesed and Gevura, which are really Kether energy, which is where the protection comes from. So it's even higher than Chacham and Bina. And that's which gives that security, the security entourage or whatever it is. They have another word for it, a security, I forgot what they call it. They send a security, remember the word? Where Chachma and Bina take from. Well, the Pirush Ramaz, and according to the Ramaz, because Yeshua's, because Yeshua's Esa, Yeshua's Nimshachim. According to the Ramaz that says that the Yeshua's are drawn miyasoid the Atik Yomin, from the Yesod of Atik Yomin, even higher than the Mazolis. This reminds me of last week's class, 2 weeks ago, when we were going higher and higher and higher in the Hamalubish be'erech Anpin that is enclosed in Erech Anpin. So we're raising it up a much higher notch. Imke Mayonea Yeshuahem Atik Yomim ve'erech Anpin is much higher. Is Atik Yomin himself and Erech Anpin, which is the source, the quintessential source of the 5 Gevurais and the 5 Chasadim. And all of that is being plugged, coming through the water libation into our soul, giving us not only the joy and not only the bittul, but also the endurance to make it through the air and to accomplish what we need to accomplish without, in a safe manner. It's providing the security and the safety. Oid pirisham b'zoyar. Now we add something that the Zohar has another pirush, Balak, where it's a third. We had a pirush that Mayon means, Yeshua means the 2 Yesodos of Chachma and Bina. Now he brings another pirush of the Zohar, the Mayonea Yeshua hem netzach v'hod, are netzach and hod. Ubepardes amid al zeh. The Sefer HaPardes, the Ramak asks, Ma shayach lenetzach v'hod? What's the connection to netzach and hod with Mayon? Mele Yesod is called Mayon. Chachma and Bina called Mayon. What's the connection of netzach and hod? Sheyeh nikra Mayoneh HaYeshua. Based on what is explained elsewhere regarding Va'netzach Zu Yerushalayim, this will be understood. I didn't look this up, so I don't know what how he's explaining how it relates to Netzach and Hod. Okay. So now we completed the concept called Mayanai HaYeshua. But now he's going to go back. Now he's going to introduce to us, go back to the idea that the water libations are not written in the Torah. Of course, Chacham is higher than Bina in such a high place. And then he's going to add something. Something was worth being up all night long just for this part. Based on what we said earlier regarding the water libations, it could not be written in the written Torah because it's from the level of scribe. That's higher than the book. Like we discussed earlier, there is the book, which is Bina. And this is coming from Chachma energy, prefixed, pre-thought state, right? As we said earlier in Canal, so similar to this, we'll even understand something even higher. After the water libations, all of Sukkos, we start doing something completely new. And we do Hakafis on Shmini Atzeres. What is Hakafis? Hakafis on Shmini Atzeres is that in the great holiday that's coming this Shabbos, and then following it on Sunday, we're going to be dancing all day long with the Torah. And the way it works is we take the Torahs out and we go in circles around the bima. The place where we read, we go around and around and around in circles. And where does that custom? It's a custom. It's not a law. It doesn't say anywhere in Talmud that's it's not even mentioned in the Talmud. It somehow became a custom to the Jewish people that somehow appeared and it became so, and everybody does it. And it started like, and some say it's mentioned in the Zohar already, but in any other Jewish lineage, in the revealed part, nowhere. And it's brought already in the Rishonim in the days of they bring the concept, but it's mentioned in Zohar. That's it. But it's not a law. It's not a halacha. You have no obligation to hakafas. So you would think, okay, it's a minhag, so it's not that important. It's a nice thing. It's a nice end to the holidays. He says, no. There is what can be written in the Torah. That's a lower level. There's what can be come down in the oral Torah, which is a higher level. And there is what can't even come down in the oral Torah because it's even higher than the oral Torah. It's even higher than Chachma. And that's the Hakafis. So therefore, it just has, where does it come from? You know where it comes from? It comes from, what do you say when you say, there's just when someone says, I didn't tell you how to do that, I just had a intuition. It's the godly intuition of the Jewish soul. Why? Because God couldn't even communicate it. Even in he couldn't write it in the book. He couldn't even, communicate it to the rabbis as an oral type of a tradition. It just needs to be an intuition because it's so deep, it's so essential. It goes into the essence of everything. It couldn't be revealed in anything. And this is only in Chassidus do you get that. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says, the Rebbe explains this, not the Alter. The Rebbe took this piece that the Alter Rebbe says over here, the Rebbe dances with this, the Rebbe makes this into pages and pages of Torah. All this idea. Minhag is higher. Jewish customs are higher than laws. Because here's the thing, in a relationship, for instance, you can be married in a way where you appreciate each other, at least if your husband or your wife explicitly ask you for something, you'll do it for them. And then your marriage reaches a deeper point that they don't have to say it, but they can hint to it. And the truth is, in a relationship, the way you always want to test your relationship, how much the other person really senses you, is you want to sometimes not say it. You just want to give like a little clue because you want the other person to connect to you on a deeper level that they can pick up on the nuances. And the ultimate deepest connection is when you didn't even have to give a clue, but they knew exactly what you want without you even saying. and maturity of a relationship on the highest level. So in our connection with God, the commandments is what God is explicitly stating of us. The rabbis are picking up on hints. And the Jewish custom is we know what God wants without him even ever saying it, showing on the deepest bond. It's for that reason the Rebbe says that the water libations had differentiations of who can dance and who couldn't. We said earlier, the great rabbis and the tzaddikim danced, but not everybody. Hakafis, the Rebbe says, there's no difference. Not only tzaddikim dance and everybody else is onlookers. Everybody dances. Equal. Why? Because you're tapping such a deep level of essence where there is no difference between one soul and another soul. It's just the essence of the soul, which is one with the essence of God. And over there, everybody's equal. And that's what revealed by the Hakafis. It's so deep, it's so high. And that's why it comes after Simchas Beis HaShoeva. We're going deeper and deeper, and we reach the pinnacle of everything. We reach total oneness with God. The dancing and the surrounding, the circles that we do with the Torah. It wasn't even written, even in the oral law. It's only a custom. They come from the encompassing energies around the level called Father, which means they're the lights of Kesser that are encompassing lights. The Torah Shabbat Peh is the indwelling light of Chachma. Every sphera has Or Pnimi, internal light, and Or Makiv, encompassing lights. And encompassing lights are always higher than internalized lights, because internalized it can go into the vessel. So even though Chachma is so lofty that even its internal light is so abstract, but the Makiv lights of Chachma are so much higher. And that's where, so the water libation comes from the internalized of Chachma, internal energy of Chachma, internalized energies of Chachma. And our kafis come from the encompassing lights around Chachma, even higher. It was not given over to be written, even in Torah Shabbat Peh, even in the oral law, because that's the internal light of Chachma. And this comes from the transcendental lights of Chachma. Carter of Lazen is Barba Makamacha. Now, similar to this idea that a higher thing is less obligatory, same what we're saying over here is the highest thing and it's not an obligation. It's just a minute. It's the deepest thing and yet you're not obligated. That's the whole point. Are you showing up when you're not obligated? Because how can you not show up? This is you. This is your essence. But we see something like that. It says 3 prayers every day. Shachar, Mincha, Ma'ariv. So today's days, they're all obligatory. We have to daven the morning prayer, afternoon prayer, and evening prayer. But according to the Talmud, and back then, the first 2, morning and afternoon prayer, are obligatory. The evening service is considered voluntary. If you want, you can do it. You don't have to. So it's explained because it's higher than the other prayers. That's why it's voluntary. Not because it's less important. It's touching on it's touching on a level which can't be obligatory, because it's also because an obligation means it's a level where we can stimulate. So you're obligated to do it. But this is a level beyond where you can't stimulate. You just open yourself to up, and it has to happen on its own. So that's why you can't obligate it. It's just the Karov Lazeh. So it's similar to the concept of minhag. That's what he's comparing it. This Barba Makamach being Tfilas Arvis L'Shus, that the prayer of evening services is a voluntary. It's non-obligatory. It's because when you're drawing down by the evening service, you're pulling from such a high place. The arousal of below can't reach so high. It's a voluntary type of a prayer. It's not an obligation. As we said over. This explains our kafis. Wow. So the Alter Rebbe dropped the bomb over here when he reveals what our kafis are. Now, in the parentheses, the Tzemach Tzedek, we're going to conclude the discourse, is going to go and give us that rich explanation of what we spoke earlier about Usheavtem Maim. Till now, we said that going back to the water libation. He's not going to talk about our kafis anymore. He's going back to the water libation, but he's going to give us a whole rich understanding, which I mentioned it briefly earlier in which I was saying earlier, we were learning that that water is really, you can't be happy by drinking water. Water doesn't make you happy. The point over here is make sure that while you drink water, also have a cup of wine. So you have both. You can connect your chachma and your bina. You have the joy even while you're drawing the water. But we're going to learn now, no, deeper, that the water itself can, usually water, chachma, which is lofty energy, can bring you to joy. But now it could. Now he's going to reach a level where he's going to explain that maybe after hakafis, you can get joy even from water. Maybe because he just opened us up to the level of hakafis, he can reinterpret Usheavtem Maim, because we're now operating on a whole different scale. That could be why he saves this part to the end. Regarding the drawing of water with joy, there was great joy by the drawing of the water. Moving this will be understood in Masha Kazav and Makamacha, with that which is stated elsewhere. Pasuk b'yom hashmini atzeres, on the pasuk b'yom hashmini atzeres, one of the Maimar hashmini atzeres, shebchinas chachma me'ira b'chinas richuk. Chachma usually shines at a distance, because again, chachma is very vague energy. It's not, you don't really. So if you're experiencing a godly revelation of chachma, it's hovering, it's far. Like it says, Amarti Echkama, King Solomon says, I thought I will reach chachma, I will be wise. It's distant from me. King Solomon, the wisest of all people, said, I thought I will attain chachma, but it's far from me. So even a brain like King Solomon senses the distance that there is between him and chachma. If it's distant, there's no joy. This is also the idea where it says, when Moshe was in the basket floating on the Nile River, it says his sister stood at a distance. So what does his sister have to do? Because the sister is representing the level of chachma. It's called sister. What's chachma called sister? There's a verse that says, Emar l'chachma, say to wisdom, you're my sister. So you see, wisdom is called sister. It doesn't explain over here why, but wisdom is called sister. Now, when we put the two verses together, say to wisdom, you're my sister. Then it says, that his sister stood at a distance, is a sign that Chachma, who is the sister, stands far. Chachma is not because the revelations of Chachma are so lofty, it's not something that is close to us. It's farther away. I'm a Migdash Melech, Pashas told us. Look at Migdash Melech, Pashas told us where he explains this. There's another verse. It says, from a distant, God is appearing to me. God is being shown to me from a far place. But Bina is close. From Bina is drawn in a way of closeness. And when the lights of Bina are on, we feel God is very close. When Chachma is on, we feel a little distant. Because God is so big and vast. When Bina is, God is more closer to us. More, we can cuddle in him more. Chachma is God's infinity and greatness and vastness. Another interpretation to distant. He's distant in Chachma. He's close in Bina, like a father and a mother. Father usually, in the two parents, mother is more cuddling and father is more awe, more distant. That's why the verse says, Keish, like a person, Asher imoy tenachamenu. It says God is going to comfort us like a person whose mother comforts him. A mother can comfort a child because she's very close to him. He feels comforted by his mother. And because of the closeness of the level of mother, which is Bina, we say, Ema banim daika samecha. The mother of the boys is where Simcha is. That's where there's daika samecha. From the mother, from Bina, there is Simcha. There is joy. We say it in Hillel, Psalm 113. The mother of the children, samecha. Sha Simcha, because joy, joy is where there is revelation. Revelation comes from Bina, not from Chacham. That's why we say water doesn't bring you happiness. Wine brings you happiness. That's why wine is what brings you joy, because wine is Bina. However, that idea is all year long. But Sukkos, we get a special treat. But on the holiday of Sukkos, yesh koyach l'nishmas Yisrael, because we've become so empowered by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. we've downloaded such energies into our soul that we are able to experience Chachma up and close. Chachma, which is usually very lofty and far and distant, it can be mamish in front of us. Because of its closeness, of its revelation, it can bring to joy. There is power to the Jewish souls. To draw down. I'm going to be done in a few minutes. 10 minutes. To draw down wisdom. What? Yeah. That the Chachma should come down in a way, in a way of closeness, vigiloi. Literally the same like Bina. Take what you need. Just a bunch of singles. And on that it says, in other words, Chachma is able to come down on such a level that he came mamish at the point where it says that Chachma father could be close. He's got all the cash right over here. I usually has to go to his mom. For me, he doesn't get. And that's why it says, Ben Chacham Yismachav. Versteh? So that Yisamach Av, that even the father can bring simcha. Usually it's the mother that brings simcha. But here it says Ben Chacham Yismach Av. The wise son can have simcha. Ben Chacham Dav. And that's on Sukkos, where even the Ben Chacham Yismach Av. The simcha can be even from Chacham. And this is the idea of the joy of Beis HaShe'eva. And what it also really means is that we're able to comprehend what is incomprehensible. That's also that the Chacham is becoming so revealed that what is beyond logic, we comprehend it. It's not comprehending with logic, but we comprehend it in our soul. That's the point. We get it. We get what's beyond logic. It's to grasp what is ungraspable. Usually we're grasping what is meant to be grasped. On Sukkos, we can grasp what's ungraspable. And therefore we can have joy in water as well. That's the joy of the Beis HaShe'eva. Maim Chayim, the living water is Chachmi Allah, the supernal Chachma. Nimshach b'chinas giloi v'kirov. It's drawn Usheavtem Maim, bring the water and bring it into a cup. The very fact that we're putting the water into a cup, it means that we're grabbing it, we're grasping it, we're drawing it into a vessel. It's revealed, vikirov and close. Just like usually the mother is the one that's bringing, just like usually the wine is in a pitcher, and the wine is bringing joy. The joy is the revelation, remember? Joy and revelation is one thing. That's when it's drawn down and it reveals itself. The mind powers of the Father, and it's becoming so tangible. The lights of Chachma are becoming so vivid, just like the revelation of the Moichen of Ema, of the Moichen of Bina. And the power of this, how do we have such ability that comes, it follows Yom Kippur? Because on Yom Kippur we've reached such a high level. We've rung up so high. What does that mean? Because through tshuva, he gives such an amazing explanation of why Chachma becomes so accessible. Usually Chachma is aloof, it remains hidden, shy, closed. Why does Chachma suddenly become so revealed? That's because through our repentance that we do on Yom Kippur, we evoke the levels of the crown, like we discussed, in going into the Holy of Holies, entering into the crown, entering into the levels of the Or Ein Sof, which is what Tshuva is, which is beyond Chachma. Then when Keser is revealed, Keter, the crown, is revealed. And where is it revealed? B'Chachma, into Chachma. Because we're attaching the lights of Chachma to manifest into the system, into Chachma. It causes Chachma to rattle itself up and to reveal itself. It causes chachma to reveal itself. Why? He brings in why is chachma, whose nature is to be secluded and elusive, because it's now the lights of Kesser are turned on in chachma, it causes chachma to reveal itself. He gives a beautiful example, a beautiful, not example, but illustration to it. Well, Derech Mashal gives an example. HaChacham, a wise man, so a very wise person who's introverted. A lot of people are very, very wise. Usually wise people are pretty quiet. The guy is quiet, doesn't share, doesn't. But suddenly they have amazing new brainstorms, amazing new insights. But because there's so much explosive energy taking place in their brain, it causes them to open their mouth and to share with others. They start leaking information why? Because it's like their vessels are overflowing. They can't, there's no space anymore just to keep it inside. So it flows over. And that's the idea. When Chachma suddenly made contact with Keter light, which is infinitely higher than Chachma, it enriched the Chachma so much that Chachma has to spill over. So there's such an influx of Chachma that Chachma, therefore the Chachma energy comes close, it's not far anymore, it's not hiding. When new ideas occur to him, he is forced to reveal a little bit of his wisdom. Because he can't keep it quiet because there's too much light. Like it says, the concept of then it will break open. Like the morning, your light. Yibaka is the Lashon. It says, so the Alter Rebbe explains, it's like a vessel so full that it breaks open from the cracks. Look in that Maimer. V'sham nisbar in Yezeh. V'ayim asher kasav v'pasha shemois. If the Ramas misam pela adam. V'zehu inyan, and this is the idea. V'chasidecha yiranenu. That your pious ones will make you sing. Usually, it's the Levites who make you sing, and the Levites are from the side of Gevura. The Kohanim are on the sides of Chesed. So usually, the singing, the joy, comes from the Levites, which are on a much lower level. They're called purity, not holy. The Kohanim, they're drawing higher energy. They can bless you, but they can't make you sing. But over here it says Chasidecha, which are Kohanim, because they come from Chesed, as it says in Parshas V'zoysa Bracha. We say it now. Tumecha ve'urecha, your breastplate of the Urim v'Tumim, le'ish Chasidecha, to the man of Chesed, which is Aaron HaKohen. He's the man of Chesed, and what? And they will make you sing. Now, I'll remind you something that you might remember, that I got so excited in the Sukkah when I said most people who would teach this Maim probably would not know this for Chasidecha Yaranenu. But a few years ago, we learned the discourse. It was a biur on the Zohar, where it says that David HaMelech at a certain time set up a one-time situation. He wanted to set up things differently, and he set up that the Kohanim should play the music instead of the Leviim. And we said it was a whole crossover, and the whole Maimon was to explain why King David was doing a chiddush and making the Kohanim sing instead of the Levites, which is mamish this whole idea of a higher revelation, which we discussed a few years ago. I was just very excited when I saw this over here, because I remember that we learned it, and it was such a beautiful Maimon then. In the beginning of Parshas Vayetze, that was the Zohar that we learned. It's the Biurei HaZohar in Parshas Vayetze that we learned a couple of years ago, where it discusses the Kohanim singing instead of the Levites. Okay, if I wouldn't be in a rush now, I would actually open up the Mayon website and find the Maimer just to know what the name was. Just so that you can go, I remember that. Now, the first reason, now he's going to give another reason why. He's going to add explanation why Chachma becomes so tangible that we can rejoice with it. So the first reason was because the tshuva that we did, which opened up the lights of Keter, increased the energy in Chachma so much that Chachma has to spill over. Now he's going to give another reason, also related to tshuva. When you're doing tshuva, it's based on the concept that everything above mimics and reflects what is happening below. What do we want to accomplish here? We want to accomplish that chachma that's usually distant should come close. How do we do that? When we are distant all year long and we come close to God, it causes above that the higher, more distant elements of the divine come close. It's a literal Eisarusa Delatat. Since tshuva means that someone who's been far comes close, so its repercussions above is that the levels of the divine that are far come close. Same idea. The distant one becomes close. The level of chachma that is distant, it should come close. Now we can also even add more to this. Now he's going to add another knech. So the Maim is building, the discourse is building. The first point that we learned was that on Sukkos you're going to have, in addition to wine, you also have chachma. Now, when it says you should do it with joy, it means connect the experience of bina to chachma. Do both. Then the Maim went deeper and said, no, the joy will come from the water libation itself. You will experience chachma so close and vivid that you can have joy even in chachma. Now he's going to add that when you have that kind of an experience, when you have joy coming from chachma, it's a much safer joy. Much safer joy. Why? Because it's joy without ego. Joy always has a danger. What does joy have a danger? Because joy makes you feel yourself a little bit. And when you feel yourself, that's why the service of Hashem that is more, you're feeling more the awe of God and less of yourself is always safer. When you're feeling self, which joy is an expansion. For example, give an example. Someone who wanted to serve God with joy was Noach. And he drank wine. And he took a major fall. As we know what happened to him. Even Adam and Chava, it says, also wanted to serve God through experience, feeling. But she felt, she saw the fruit is lush and delicious and tasty. In other words, she wanted the experience. When you have the experience in things, you're feeling self. Because part of experience is self. And when you feel self, there's always and therefore, instead of, but when your joy, as we discussed, is a chachma type of a joy, that means it's a type of joy that there's an openness. That means it's a full expansion experience, but it's not, there's no self there at all. It's just like a bittul digger experience of joy. The chachma in saturates the bina, the joy that it should have bittul. And then you're in a much safer place. And that's why it's called, now takes it back, he's going to explain, that's why it's called Maim ha-Yeshua. Because that's the salvation to watch over that the person shouldn't fall. Because if the energies only come from Bina, from the river, as we discussed earlier, then since it begins with self, then the self slowly creeps up and gets thicker and denser until you forget God and it becomes all about self. When you're rooted in Chachma and there's bittul, there's no fall. On Yom Tov, it mentions joy, Lefishu Maichem the Ema. Usually on the holidays, we have great revelations of Chachma. Of Bina. From the mother's side. And it's Hasaga, grasp, Ava, B'Shabbos. But in Shabbos, Maichem the Abba, there is a revelation of Maichem the Abba. That which was not possible to understand. And therefore, L'Shayach Simcha, you can't have joy from Chachma light. Kihem Bittul. What Chachma experiences bring is Bittul. That's what the Zohar says, that the pure, clean waters, fresh waters, the Chachmilah, they usually don't produce joy. Wine produces joy. But since Yom Kippur, it's not just the Shabbos, it's Shabbos Shabbosain, like we learned in the last discourse that we learned by Yom Kippur. We learned how much greater it's the lights of Keser, deep and higher and higher and higher. It's higher than Shabbos is called Kodesh, and Yom Kippur is called Kodesh HaKadoshim. And it's higher than the supernal Chachma. What that affects is that Chachma should come up and close, like we discussed earlier. That you should be able to comprehend the incomprehensible. That's why there was joy, that you had actual understanding. See, earlier, I think the Chiddush over here is another idea. Earlier in the Maim, he says that the Chachma, you feel it very vividly, but not necessarily that you can grasp it. Here he's adding, no, that the Chachma comes so close that you can actually grasp the ungraspable. But, and what kind of joy does it bring? The joy is a joy that is a humble joy. It's a bitteldige joy. Now, this danger that when a person is into experience and into feeling, that's why people ask me if they should do ayahuasca. And they say, listen, you're trying to learn Hasidus so much, and you'll take you go on a little bit of a trip, you will really feel all these things. People tell they just opens you up to real experience, So my answer is, I don't know. My teacher didn't tell me to do so. And things like this, I'm not going to do without a teacher. Although I'm very tempted, because I've spoke to people about experience. They said, listen, I learned Hasidus 50 years. I want to feel something. I want to actually go there. A little medication will open me up. I'll be able to actually see it. It's like unbelievable. Someone makes me crazy. I said, why? Because I'm not going to do something. If I don't have a teacher who told me and that this is what I got to do, whatever experiences I need to experience to the full, I'll experience when Mashiach comes. But on my own, I'm not going to go test with that. But in any case, when it says that God was worried, when God took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim, it says he did not lead them through the land of Plishtim because it's close. Instead, he took them a long way through the desert. The first verse in Parshas Beshalach. So the Alter Rebbe explains, Plishtim is the land of experience. Plishtim comes from the word open. An open alley is called Mavi Mefulash. It's open. It is two ways of serving God. One is that you feel that there's guardrails. You feel there's a guardrails. Another place you feel open. Your guardrails means you're serving something else. You're surrendered to a power. And experience is like, I feel it. I understand that I experience it. So it says in Hasidus that from Pelishtim, from an openness like this, you can end up in the land of the Philistines, which can lead to a lot of Karevu, as it explains over there, that being in Eretz Canaan. So, but in order to be protected, you have the lights of Chachma. This is the springs of salvation. That there should not be, it protects that there shouldn't be the yanika of the chitzonim, which can come if you're bina based, you can have, God forbid, yanika sachitzonim. Chachma is bittul and pushes away all the klipa. Same is also the joy that's in a state of bittul is a protected joy. And that's the idea of Mayone HaYeshua, that the Maim that's coming on Chachma, it itself is the protection. It itself is the salvation to protect, not to fall in the Yanika Sachitzan, to the external, to be able to, God forbid, give energy to the wrong side. Wow, what a Maimer. And with this we conclude. And may we have already see the water libations, the wine libations. We have one more day tomorrow morning. We can still experience it in the Holy Temple.